Welcome to PlanStrongerTV. I'm your host, David Holland. I am joined on today's program by financial author Steve Repak. Steve is an Army veteran who became a certified financial planner and teaches on the dangers of debt. We'll also discuss how to handle money in relationships and work through the conflicts. I'll also give you the inside scoop on politics and your money. Let's roll. All right, welcome to the program. Very excited to have with us Steve Repak, a certified financial planner with an incredible story, and he's going to help us understand better about money and why it's so emotional. So Steve, welcome to the program.
David, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. So I love your story. You were in the military. Yeah. All right, and well, first, thank you for your service to our country. Yeah. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
We need to recognize that in this country. So your story is compelling. You started in the military. You were in the military for 8 years?
12 years.
12
years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So during that period of time, you had your own experience, which we'll talk about, and then when you finished your military career, you then became a
certified financial planner.
All right. There's no higher calling in life. So, and you work in North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm in Charlotte.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for coming, visiting us here in Daytona Beach in our studios. So let's dive in then to that personal story that is so compelling. In the military work that you did, that experience, you had some things happen that really gave you a unique perspective about money.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a lot of times you have people that talk about money and it's like they have this easy life and everything's great and they don't understand the struggles and the stress and the emotional part of their money. But you know, I joined the military right out of high school, and I come from very humble beginnings. I come from a little small town called Lyons, Georgia, and I grew up poor. I always had clothes. I never remember going hungry. I had a shelter over my head, but kids made fun, you know, of the clothes that I wore and stuff, and made fun that because I lived in a trailer park, and I really didn't have a lot of opportunities. You know, most of my friends went right to college and stuff like that, and I just didn't have that type of opportunity, so I joined the military. So here, you know, and what was so cool about it was the first time I saw real money. I was getting paid $700 every 2 weeks, and I was like, I can't believe people are making so much. You know, they make $700 a week, I mean, every 2 weeks, and throughout my military career, you know, I got into a bad cycle. What would happen was, you know, I'd get promoted, I'd make more money, and then I would sit there and rack out credit card debts. And basically, after 12 years of military service, I ended up leaving with $32,000 of credit card debt. And like I said, ironically, I landed a job in finance. So my job was to help other people with their finances. And this person had $32,000 of credit card debt, no money in savings, no money in retirement, living paycheck to paycheck. Credit was just a mess and just a total hypocrite. And so that's my story in a nutshell.
Well, it's very interesting because I can imagine what that felt like, that you're sitting down with somebody giving them advice and you've got that inside. So we're going to talk a little bit on the show today about emotions, but what's really interesting is you knew that's what you were supposed to do. And I love that part of the story, that you didn't let that stop you. You used it as part of your story, and you've written 2 books, Dollars and Uncommon Sense, and then your most recent book, the 6-Week Money Challenge. Yeah. So, you know, that's just, I mean, you're taking this thing that wasn't good, most people would agree, and you've turned it into a story that you can tell. So let's dig into the emotional aspect of it. What was that? What did that feel like for people that are out there watching this that maybe can't relate? What did that feel like with being in that spot? Just a lot of people I talk to, it's suffocating.
It is. You have no options. You don't make the best decisions. I mean, when you have debt, I mean, you're not going to be a good parent. You're not going to be a good spouse. You're not going to be a good worker. I mean, it's going to really affect your lives. And debt could really, it holds you into bondage. And that's what I felt. I just felt the stress, and like I said, I just wasn't making the best decisions because of that credit card debt. And my goal was, I just didn't want to. I was tired of feeling bad, and it was time to make a difference. And
depressing.
It is. It was definitely depressing. But to give you hope is that a lot of times, it's kind of a joke. If I say, hey, how would you eat a baby elephant? You'd say, Steve, I'd eat it one bite at a time. And that's the same thing with credit card debt. So it doesn't matter if you have $120,000 worth of student loans or if you have $30,000 of credit card debt. If you can sit there and just make it manageable, live one day at a time, make the right decisions every day, those decisions start adding up, and eventually, the debt will start getting paid off, pay down, and eventually it's off. But it's definitely an emotional roller coaster because you're going to have times where you're on track, and then you're going to have times where things are just going crappy, and you're like, gosh, where did I get this unexpected bill from? And it kind of gives you a setback, but you can't allow your emotions to control your financial destiny.
Why do you think it is, Steve, that money runs our lives? Why? I mean, I know money runs through everything. It's everywhere, it's everything. But why do you think that is? Does it have something to do with our emotions, or does it have something to do with just how we place value on things?
I mean, it's a combination of a few things, but like I says, with money, it's something that it can make you happy, it can make you sad, it can make you angry, it can make you stressed, and the people that aren't good with their money, they actually allow their emotions to influence their financial decisions. And believe it or not, it doesn't matter if you only make a little bit of money or you make a whole bunch of money. The people that are able to control their emotions, they're able to make so many better financial decisions. So it comes down to just your emotions.
One of the big ones I know people deal with is embarrassment, that they're just flat out embarrassed. And how does that affect people in some of their decision making, you think, with money? Does it cause them to be more conservative, more withdrawn, more aggressive? Does it express itself in different ways?
Well, my personal situation worked like this is that once I was in the military, I remember growing up and people making fun of the clothes that I wore. So I spent a lot of money. I was using credit cards to have a fancy wardrobe, to have the nice car. I was buying those things because I didn't want people to look at me like I wanted them to look at me differently.
You were compensating.
I was, and so like I said, those bad money choices, they can influence people in so many different ways. But for me, for the embarrassment is that I was just remember being embarrassed at school and people making fun of my clothes, and I'm like, that's never going to happen again. And I used credit card debt I used credit cards to compensate for it, and I ended up, in a pretty big mess.
Just as an aside on being in the military and you talked about having the income. When you're in the military, for those of us that may not be as familiar, a lot of your expenses are paid, right?
Embarrassing. I mean, this is embarrassing. It's like my food was paid for, my clothes was paid for, my shelter was paid for, my medical was paid for, and I still was racking up credit card debt.
A lot of people that find themselves in that place where people say, well, golly, how did you get here? I think one of the natural reactions is people will hide it, they'll lie about it, and they'll deny it. Hide, lie, and deny the debt, or say that's something I will deal with later, like you've talked about. When I get more income or I get a raise, I will take care of it then. I'll plan tomorrow.
I was the denier. I kept on saying that I didn't have a problem because as long as I could make the minimum payments on my credit card debt, I had it under control. And the truth is I didn't have it under control. And like I said, I just continued, in the military, I got promoted from E4 to now as a sergeant making more money. And then I'd say, as soon as I get promoted next time, I'm going to take that extra money and get out of credit card debt and all my problems. And I always did that. Like I said, after 12 years of denying that I had a problem, I ended up with so much credit card debt. But once I said that, hey, I have a spending problem. I'm addicted to plastic crack. I'm addicted to credit cards. I have to get rid of them. And as soon as I acknowledged that I had a problem, then I was able to start taking the steps to get out of it.
That's excellent. Good for you, Steve, and good for all of the people I know that you've helped since then, because you have that experience and perspective and certainly can relate and be candid with people to have them understand what they're dealing with. So how about for couples? I know you've done a lot of work with couples, and we have this whole area that is really a challenge for spouses is marital financial infidelity, where one of the spouses doesn't know what the other spouse is doing, or there are financial decisions they make without the other spouse, and maybe they rack up debt. You've advised a lot of people in this area. What do you say to people who may be concerned about that or even struggling with that?
You know, it's kind of funny is that when we are attracted to somebody, we're usually attracted to somebody that's like total opposite. So you might have somebody that's good with their finances, somebody that's not so good. And it's just the way, and the stuff that attracted you at the beginning is the stuff that kind of drives you crazy down the road. But, you know, no matter where you're at, if you're a spender or a saver or a credit card, I mean, you have to work together as a team. And that's what, you know, a marriage or a couple or anything about is that you have strengths and weaknesses, and you're supposed to allow, you know, you're supposed to help the person with their weaknesses, if it's financial or whatever, and vice versa. And a lot of times, you know, somebody that, especially guys, I mean, guys, they want to fix everything. Well, if they have the financial problems, they're not going to be able to fix too much, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. We do have different personalities or maybe ways we approach things. So how about the couple where they get married and maybe one of them comes to the relationship with some premarital debt? They had the debt before they entered into the relationship. Maybe they told the spouse about it. Maybe they didn't. What are some strategies or some recommendations you might have, Steve, to help people who are maybe working through that?
Yeah, I mean, when you get married, it's richer for poor, better for worse. So it's like whenever you're marrying somebody, I mean, you're taking their baggage, their emotional baggage, their financial baggage, and like I said, you have to come up with a game plan. You gotta look at it as a team approach. Is that even though that you say, well, gosh, my spouse brought the debt into it, it's our debt. If you don't look at it as our, if you're looking at it as mine and yours, you're never, it doesn't matter who you sit down with, your problems are not gonna get fixed. But if you can come together as a team and say, this is our issue that we're gonna fix it together, because you need the encouragement, because when you have debt and the other spouse doesn't, I mean, you already have the guilt, you're hiding it, you're feeling bad, you have all those emotional ties that go with it. So you need that encouragement, somebody that's gonna sit there and kick you in the butt when you need that kick in the butt, but someone that's also giving that gentle, loving kindness when you kind of need that type of encouragement.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And you know, that there's a part of us, I think it's part of the way our minds are built, that we're going to preserve ourself, that self-identity, and we're going to protect ourselves. So if we're the spouse that is feeling guilty and has this shame or very upset about the debt, there's going to be a territorial or defense mechanism that kicks in, I think. And so there has to be this engagement and conversation.
You got to. Like I said, you're not going to be able to fix it yourself. And like I said, it's going to, as soon as you have the issue fixed, as soon as the marriage gets better, as soon as the work gets better, as soon as everything gets better. But if you have that financial stress, we know that's one of the top 3 things people divorce over is money issues. And so if you're saying that, hey, my goal is to have a successful marriage and I'm looking long term, I better fix my short-term financial issues by sitting down with my spouse, getting everything out in the open, down and dirty. We're going to sit there and write everything down, our income, expenses, our savings, and we're going to come up with a plan and follow it day by day.
That's excellent. If a couple has a hard time really having this conversation, I recommend they try to find somebody to facilitate it. I've had people come into my office and say, you know, we need help. And they come in and I start asking all of my normal questions, right? I'm going to understand their situation. And through that process, a lot of times it will come out in the open. They'll get more engaged and talk about it because they just sometimes have a hard time, you know, getting that conversation started.
Yeah, and what's so funny is that, like I said, you have some debt, you know, definitely sit down with a certified financial planner that has their interest, you know, that has your best interest at heart. Because at the end of the day is that a husband or spouse, we just don't listen to each other. I mean, they sit down with a certified financial planner, they say, well, you need to do this, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to all follow together. And the spouse will say, didn't I just tell you that last week that we need to do that? It's like, the spouses don't listen to each other, but they will listen to a perfect stranger. So I definitely encourage, have a facilitator, somebody that can keep the emotions out of it, because like I said, we're dealing with emotional baggage. Right.
Yeah, when we sit down with them, we don't have the baggage, we don't have the history, we don't have the whatever misdeeds, we don't have that emotional component, so we can be much more objective. And I started to laugh, Steve, because I'm thinking of so many situations where, you know, one person in the couple says something and the other one says, well, I said that. And I had one lady one time, I love it, she said, yeah, but he said it. referring to me like, well, I know you said it, but he said it. So if people are struggling, I think that's great advice for them to sit down with somebody, and it can be their clergy, it can be somebody else. It doesn't have to be a financial planner. Of course, that's what financial planners do.
Yes.
You know, we deal with money all the time.
Yeah. But definitely, you need to have somebody. You have to have a non-interested partner that doesn't have any baggage, no emotions in it that can help. Because it's very emotional. I mean, it's very emotional. The stress and the debt and you just feel embarrassed, and like I said, you need that third party in there just to kind of keep the boundaries and keep it from getting emotional.
We talked about the spouses coming in and maybe one of them is hiding debt, or, you know, one of the things I've seen is there'll be one of the people in the couple might be spending money the other one doesn't know about, or in today's world where we have a lot of blended families, there might be where they've agreed to certain things together. One of the spouses might be helping a child from a prior marriage, and they don't tell the spouse, and it can create some conflict. Yeah. So do you see with that maybe that can lead to additional problems? I mean, I guess the question is, how do we, you know, absent getting them to have like this big mea culpa moment, get people to work through those things? Yeah.
It comes down to give and take, and it's a great story is that I had a husband and wife come into the office, and the husband was a spender, the wife was a saver, and they were just fighting about it. And I says, well, we need to sit down and work this out together, but before I help you guys out, I want to meet with you individually. Ooh. And so when I met with them individually, you know, the husband comes in because he was a spender. He had his arms crossed, and he didn't want to have anything, he didn't want to listen to me. So I said, if your wife would sit there and put $300 in your savings account that you could spend any way you want, would you be happy with that? And he looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? You're supposed to be telling me that I can't be spending money. You're talking about I can spend money?
How about
he
that?
kind of liked that, right? So he left, and then I sat down with the wife, and I said, you know, she was expecting me saying, I bet you got my husband. I bet you told him to quit spending money. I said, you know, would you think about putting at least $300 in a savings account that's all that he can spend? Okay, that's going to be his budget, but you can't question where he's going to spend it. And she didn't understand it. And I said, do you remember like ever dating a guy when you was younger and your parents didn't approve of him? And she goes, gosh, yeah, I do. I says, what happened when your parents said that you couldn't date him? I'm going to date him and I'm going to do whatever I want. I said, that's the same thing that you're doing with your spouse. So you have to put it together. So it was some give and take. So she was able to give a little bit of the money, let him spend it, but he also had a boundary that, hey, once that $300 was gone, that's it. So it was kind of a win-win situation. Definitely unique.
Well, without that dollar amount, this $300 you talk about, the entire money is really kind of what he's looking at. In other words, you know, it seems like a concession on her part, but it's actually quantifying, you know, the debt or the amount of money that's going to be spent, not creating additional debt or other issues. Yeah. You know, and again, it goes back to the idea of, you know, budgeting and we're on a diet, you know, with our finances, and that's hard. Nobody likes a diet. No. Tell me one person who loves a diet and feeling like they're restricted. No. And we don't like it with our finances either. No. I've had people come in, Steve, and they have a big moment where it's like finally, it's almost like I feel like sometimes I take confession, where all of a sudden it comes out that there's been something going on. And then after that, then it becomes a negotiation and working through and trying to reconcile the spender versus the saver, or, you know, just the one that wants to be more fastidious about their finances versus the person that just wants to be a little more loose.
Yeah, it's just a great feeling that it's like each individual, we have our weaknesses and our strengths, and it's just like I said, money is one of those big issues that causes a lot of problems, and when you can facilitate basically help for them, and like I said, you can save marriages and save families, and you do a very important job, and at the end, you do it day in and day out, and you don't realize how much you affect others. But at the end of the day, you have to be intentional. You have to admit that you have a problem. You got to seek help, because at the end of the day, we can give you all the great information, but if you don't apply it, it's not going to do you any good.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Apply it, ladies and gentlemen, and heed Steve's great advice. Steve, so glad to have you on the program. Steve Repak, certified financial planner, helping us reconcile and understand this emotional thing about money. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Okay, it's time for the scoop. Now, this may not seem like much of an inside scoop, but I'm going to share it with you because I think it's an interesting thing to talk about and to get different perspectives on. So everywhere we turn, it seems like money or politics or both are involved. Money and power seem to go hand in hand. And there's two aspects to this intersection of money and politics that I'd like to talk about today. Right now, my mom is saying to my dad, "Oh no, how is David going to talk about politics without offending everyone?" "It'll be okay, Mom, just hold on, I've got this." All right, over the years, I've seen the subject of politics come up more and more with my own clients. So here you go. Part one. We've got to filter and understand the noise. The noise is the constant bombardment of politics and talking about how it affects your money. The media sells your ears and eyes to the advertisers. Never forget that. So it's always going to be something in politics that affects your money. And the other thing is, it's kind of like an iceberg. Most of what's going on we don't see, and we only get part of it. 90% of an iceberg is below the water. There's a lot that happens in politics that we'll never know about. So you've got to watch the data. You need to look at the financial numbers. What's happening with the Fed? What's happening with interest rates? What's happening with the stock market? Look at what's happening with companies. Read the financial data, not the headlines. Now, here's a question for you. We get worried or concerned when things seem uncertain. You know, all these things are happening. The truth is, if you look back across history, things have always been uncertain. They've never been certain. So you've got to consider your situation. Think about how long it will be before you retire, how long before you're going to need your money, how old are you, what are your assets, where are you going to draw your income from. You've got to prepare yourself. We hope for the best, but it's not a bad idea to plan for the worst, at least for part of your money. The key is you want to strike a balance. Hedge your bets. Don't go all in on any one thing. Do not keep the pedal to the metal all the way through your retirement. You've got to reduce risk as you approach needing your funds. All right, part two. If you are going to work with an advisor, or you are already, does their politics matter to you? Are you polar opposites? Is politics something you want to talk about with your advisor? Is that something they want to talk about with you? Is there a match? It seems some people and companies in the financial industry want to make a point about their political or religious views. You need to decide how important politics is to you in your relationship with your advisors, be that your financial advisor, CPA, insurance agent, or banker. I'm not saying that politics is a taboo subject when it comes to your money. To the contrary, it's important. How important is it to you? That's the question you need to think about. You probably don't want an advisor who is oblivious or completely apathetic. On the other hand, do you want a zealot? Will they be rational in their advice to you? Will decisions be made out of anger or based on a logical thought process? In other words, will it be that this thing going on with politics or their opinion about it, will that cloud their judgment? I had a client come to me a few years back whose advisor had put all of his money into precious metals and gold mining stocks. Did the advisor do that because he had done a thorough examination of that economic sector and the companies that were invested in, or was it a knee-jerk emotional decision? In the final analysis, the investor's portfolio performed poorly. The investor paid the price for the advisor's political viewpoint. I would offer the same word of caution about religion and money. Do you want to mix the two? Does your advisor? Maybe we could take that subject up another day or on another episode and really make my mom nervous. Give some thought to these issues and questions. Think about your individual situation. I'm not saying that politics should not be part of what is considered in how you manage your money. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that we've got to consider that we don't have all the facts at all the time, that there's so much going on that we don't know about, that headlines can seem scary or exciting. You know, when things are going very well, the headlines might be very good. But you have to understand that there's things that are in play that we might think are going to affect us and then don't. In other words, let me give you an example. Let's say that the economy is doing okay, jobs are, on the market, companies are growing, the jobs reports are good, inflation's tame, but there's political stuff going on that concerns you, or maybe again, the advisor that's advising you, that causes you to want to pull your money out of the market, or you get nervous. Well, you might be making a mistake by reacting to the political aspect or the political news of the day versus making sound, financial, well thought out, dare I say, logical decisions about your money. So I'm just sharing with you a concern or word of caution about politics and your money. It's for you to decide how you want to use that. Whatever you decide, if you think about it, you'll plan stronger.
If you would like more information about the topics and our guests featured in this series, please visit our website at PlanStrongerTV.com. Also, if you have a question you would like David to answer, please send it to questions@PlanStrongerTV.com.